Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this TechNet 21 webinar on EVM, Why Has Progress So Slow? Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Solokone, Modibo, Dicko, Adama Sawadogo, and Abdoulaye Djigo, who will tell you about EVM. During this session, don't hesitate to ask your questions during the presentation in the Q&A box or in the chat box, please, preferably in the Q&A box. They will be answered by the panelists after the presentation. This session will last an hour and a half, and the Q&A session will be in the last half hour or so. If you have any technical issue, you can use the chat box, and I'll try to assist you as much as I can. As usual, we'll record, or this session is recorded, and we'll share the link to the video as well as the link to the presentation, the slides, by email to everybody who registered and on the TechNet 21 website. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I'll give the floor to Solokone. Solo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. We are really happy that you are joining with your busy schedule this webinar and on the EVM lessons learned. As you know, that just to remind that effective vaccine management, which is EVM initiative, is a joint initiative from WHO and UNICEF, and the initiative have been validated and by the global partners, including Gavi. It was launched actually in 2009, and from 2009 to 2019, 10 years, we have been conducting EVM assessment in many countries, and in 2019, starting 2020, a new version of the EVM was issued, and we felt that the lessons learned from the first phase, which is the EVM 1, have been important that we draw those lessons just to inform the community and then to make the perspective for the EVM 2 rollout. And this is the outcome that we have convened from an expert, Modibo, Dicko, and the team, just to share with us here some of the findings they have found during this analysis of this 10 years period, and we really convey you just to pay attention, and there will be many things that we have discovered with them, and I hope that you will enjoy and then participating, asking many questions, because there are many concepts that they have come with. Without further delay, I will call Adama Sawadogo just to introduce Modibo and the presentation. Thank you. Good listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Suleiman Kone. Let me first thank all of you, the participants to this webinar, for your presence and actually for being here to discuss this interesting topic on EVM, mainly the lesson learned from the EVM 1 rollout. My name is Adama Sawadogo. I'm the CEO of the Balanzan Institute. The Balanzan Institute is a new partner in supply chain management, energy supply, and environment preservation to improve the API programs and other public health programs. Members of the Balanzan Institute have been involved since the inception of the EVM initiative, and many of them are still involved in its improvement and implementation in the field. One of them is Dr. Modibo Dicko, the speaker of today. Many of you know Dr. Modibo Dicko, I think, but for those who do not know him, just a few words on this specific special speaker. Dr. Modibo Dicko has more than 30 years of experience in supply chain. He is currently a senior engineer at the Balanzan Institute. He also led the development of the EVM initiative since the beginning, and also was an internal consultant for many organizations. He was actually a former WHO staff at a different level, regional and global level. So let me give the floor to him, Dr. Modibo Dicko. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Adama. Dear friends and colleagues, thank you for taking on your precious time to join me for this presentation on effective vaccine management, why the progress is so slow. Our main objective today is to draw the lessons of 10-year experience of conducting EVM assessments in order to improve the implementation of future improvement plans. To this end, we will analyze the slow and uneven progress in implementing the plans. We will look at the sociological reasons for this slow progress, as well as the managerial reasons. And then we will propose some ways forward before launching some calls to program managers and to supply chain managers as well. As an introduction, you will note that EPI is one of the oldest public health programs. It was launched with the Universal Childhood Vaccination, UCI, in the 70s, with such a generous funding that people used to say one child, one vial. It also benefited from many well-funded initiatives: maternal and neonatal tetanus elimination, polio eradication, measles and yellow fever control, introduction of new vaccines with Gavi support, etc. In 2009, WHO and UNICEF launched the Effective Vaccine Management EVM1 initiative. Since then, 195 EVM assessments have been conducted in 93 countries. And each evaluation was followed by an improvement plan. As you can see on the picture opposite on the screen, the EVM initiates a continuous improvement process whereby you plan, you implement, you monitor, you evaluate, and then based on the results, you replan, you re-implement, you re-monitor, you re-evaluate, and so on until you reach your objective. This is the principle of the Deming wheel that you know very well, which has been adopted in the EVM initiative. So, improvement plans have been prepared and have been funded, and as a result, great numbers of supply of cold rooms, refrigerators, vehicles, all types of equipment have been supplied to the programs across the countries. Academic and in-service training sessions were organized for thousands of health workers in the countries, and they benefited from mentoring, from coaching, etc. Governments and their partners engaged a lot of money. Gavi alone committed more than tens of millions USDs. Despite that, the assessments always show that there are still inadequacies, failures, and even faults. What are the reasons for that? In order to identify these reasons, we are going to analyze the results from two periods of EVM1 assessments. One period before the improvement plans in 2010-2012, and the second period after their improvement plans, after the implementation of the improvement plans, 5 years later on average, in 2017-2019. These graphs show the average results of the 195 EVM1 assessments. In blue, The blue bar shows the result for 2010 and 12 to 12, and the red bar, orange bar, show the result for 2017 to 2019. You can see the progress has been very little. For criteria, only 8 percentage points of progress between the two periods. For categories, only 10 percentage points. You can see on these graphs that criteria and categories related to inputs, those related to infrastructure, equipment, and training, like E3 capacities, E4 building, equipment, and transport, E8 knowledge of vaccine management principle, i.e. training. Those categories have achieved high scores. On the opposite, criteria and categories linked to implementation processes related to management of maintenance, E5, management of stocks, E6, management of distribution, E7, and support functions, E9, those criteria and categories have obtained a low score. You can see that on the graphs here. You can see E3, E4, and E8 are high, while the others are a bit low. If we draw a curve on top of the red bars, the curve will describe the profiles of two mountains corresponding to criteria and categories of input, E3, E4, and E8. A depression between them corresponding to criteria of processes, E5, E6, E7, and a precipice at the end of the graph corresponding to criterion E9, support functions. The same profile can be observed with categories. If we wear some artistic glasses, we will see real mountains, like on the pictures. The first mountain, we call it mountain of having because it corresponds to capacities, buildings, equipment, transport. The second mountain, we call it Mount of Knowledge because it corresponds to criteria E8, knowledge of vaccine management principle. So the depression of, we call it corresponds to criteria E5, E6, E7. We called it depression of will because these criteria are management criteria. And the precipice corresponding to criteria E9, we called it precipice of power because E9 support function includes supervision. Okay. We can see that the mount corresponds to input criteria, i.e. investments. And the depression and the precipice correspond to processes or implementation operations. Inputs are direct results of investment. They answer to the question, how many? How many fridges or vehicles have been provided? How many buildings have been built or expanded? How many training sessions have been held, etc. Processes or implementation operations, they answer to the question, how? How is maintenance organized? How are vaccine stocks managed, etc. You will notice that they involve human factor, and it is important to note that. When we analyze the depression, we see that the scores for E5, E6, and E7 criteria are low, despite the fact that the means were available through the inputs. We saw that the capacities were there, building equipment and transport were there, knowledge was there through E8. So What is the reason for scoring low? Is there a deficit of will? That's the reason we call it a depression of will. Regarding the precipice, criterion E9 relates to support functions, including supervision by the superiors. Its score was low in 2010 and 2012, and it managed to decline in 2017 and 2019. It is the only criteria which declined. It's a real failure. That's the reason we called it precipice of power. Could these two recessions explain the slow progress in EVM? That's what we will try and analyze in the next slides. We would like to understand. Investment plans were developed and funded, infrastructures were built, equipments were provided in large numbers, training was provided to thousands of officers. Despite all that, progress was slow, and the gap between input and process criteria was widening. You can see that widening gap here. You can see that the gap between input and process criteria in the blue bar, and if you compare that to the gaps between them in the red bars, you can see that the gap has widened. So, what can explain this paradox? We will try to explore two possible explanations. A sociological reason using the broken glass theory, and a managerial reason due to the deficit in support functions implementation. Regarding sociological explanation, this is an analogy with supply chain management. So stay tuned, even if it's a bit long, stay tuned. It is very related. You will see when we reach the managerial explanations. To highlight the broken window theory, researchers have parked two identical cars in the streets, same make, same model, same color. One in the Bronx, a poor neighborhood in New York, and one in Palo Alto, a rich neighborhood in California. So what happens? In the Bronx, the car was completely vandalized within a few hours. Everything that was usable was taken away, and everything that was not usable was destroyed in a few hours. At that time in Palo Alto, nothing happens. For several days, nobody touches the parked car. So, what are the reasons, the explanation? Of course, poverty is invoked as the first and foremost cause. And this opinion is shared by almost everybody. But researchers wanted to look deeper into it. So they went in Palo Alto and broke themselves a window of the parked car and observed. To their surprise, in a few hours, the same thing that happened in the Bronx happened in Palo Alto. The car was completely vandalized, reduced to the same state as the one parked in the poor neighborhood in New York, in a rich neighborhood. So, what are the explanations now? Why is the broken window of a car parked in a rich and safe neighborhood able to trigger a whole criminal process? Really interesting. We cannot invoke poverty. The neighborhood is rich. So what are the causes? We will have probably to look for them into the psychology of people, into human relationships, and into human behavior. Let's take a closer look. What does convey a broken window of an abandoned car? It conveys an idea of decadence, disinterest, and neglect. And that's a break of the codes prevailing in the neighborhood. And that raises a sense of absence of laws, norms, and rules. That's why the broken window theory says crime is higher in places with the highest level of dirt, disorder, and neglect. So that's the broken window theory. And something is happening here. Beware, if abandonment and disorder are there, social ills develop and environment deteriorates. There are many examples that we can give. For instance, in a community, in a building, if a window is broken and nobody take care to fix it, soon all the windows will be broken and the place will be occupied by criminals. Still in the community, if small offenses, parking in prohibited places, exceeding speed limit, disregarding red lights, if those small offenses are not punished, major offenses will start to happen. Even they can be followed by more serious crimes. In the family, if the house is dirty, messy, careless, with toilets smelling bad, etc., decrepit paints, etc., self-esteem of individuals in the family will decrease, and lack of respect will rise between family members, and there will be poor relationship between this family and the society in general. And talking about the society, if there is a lack of respect for societal values, for instance, if garbage is left laying around in streets, places, and nobody takes them away, and if the society lacks of respect to the authorities and vice versa, for instance, if people do not respect policemen and policemen take bribe from drivers and teachers take bribe from pupils to give them higher scores, the result is that corruption will be settled at all levels in the society. And the young people will lack education, training, and opportunities. And the whole country will be going to rack and ruins. It's so simple as that. But what are the implications for supply chain management now? That's the question that you are probably asking yourself. But before addressing this topic, I will like to draw your attention on this new paradigm. Before, supply chain management was considered as an area that would generate only costs for the program. But now people have realized that it does also produce value for the program. How? Improved supply chain management will make availability of products higher. It will shorten delivery times. Service level will improve. Patients will be satisfied. And there will be an increased attendance and fewer missed opportunities. So some benefits will accrue, health benefits will accrue for the program. But in addition to that, improved supply chain management will optimize capacities and transportation costs. And that will also result in some savings for the program. So there will be health benefits and also financial benefits for the program. Reduced capacity requirement through better storage and transport planning will also reduce the total cost of ownership. You see, and that will also enable to reduce the need for stocks at every level. For instance, safety stocks, and that will also diminish the need for working capital for the program. Reduced capacities of storage and transport will also reduce their energy requirement, with the consequence of reducing their CO2 emissions. So that will make our supply chain greener. And if on top of that, we introduce solar energy to power our fridges and cold rooms, we will make the supply chain even greener. So one in one, the effectiveness and efficiency of the program will improve. Example, by supply chain redesign in Ethiopia, skipping the Woreda level, they expect to save 5 million USD per year, plus a one-time saving of 2.7 million following the removal of security stocks in the Woredas. You see what improvement of supply chain management can result in for the program. Here in Zambia, by replacing, in a province, instead of every nurse going to the district to collect their vaccines, if the vaccines are taken to them by a vehicle, the result is that the full-time employees will be reduced from 50 to 3 for logistics activities, and the cost will be reduced by 9%. You can see that improvement of supply chain management will result in benefits, both health benefits and financial benefits for the program. But beware, simple carelessness can jeopardize this agenda. Indeed, in maintenance, for instance, if there was broken red lights in the cars, paint scratches, and nobody repaired them, soon there will be major breakdowns, accidents, and almost new cars will be on cars. If there are cobwebs behind condensers of fridges, if the outside of the fridges are dirty, if the solar panels are covered with dust, you can be sure that vaccine are badly stored inside those fridges, and that might result in high vaccine losses and waste of both domestic and donor-provided funds. In immunization safety, if used syringes are lying around in the backyard, filled safety boxes are misplaced, used syringes are found in the refrigerators, etc., you can be sure that there is a problem with immunization safety in those places. And beware of adverse events following immunization and even nosocomial infections. And there is a risk that the population will lose confidence in the health system. So it's really important to have those small things in mind. In vaccine management, if minor transgression of management principle, for instance, outdated temperature records, poorly maintained registers, vaccine registers, etc. If those small transgressions are not stopped in time, serious problem in management of vaccine will raise at the risk of major vaccine losses that can lead even to interruption of vaccinations. In staff management, if cobweb hang from the corners of the ceiling, if the walls are in poor condition with decaying paint, if there are cardboard boxes lying around, if the toilets smell bad, then you cannot expect to find enthusiastic people in such a place. You cannot expect to find motivated people in such a place. And this description reminds me of many logistics departments in the programs that I have visited across the countries. If that is the situation, of course, there is a feeling of abandonment and performance cannot be there. Regarding team spirit, if there are behavioral shortcomings, inappropriate language, people coming late at meetings, if these are not corrected in time, there will be neglect in interpersonal relation. Trust between members will diminish. There will be a poisonous atmosphere between the people, and team spirit will inexorably erode, and with it, performance also. That's the reason General Cohen used to say that he would always start the visit of military camps by visiting the toilets. Asked why, he said, if the toilets are clean and well maintained, it means that the camp commander respects his men and demands discipline from them. The camp will be well managed. Another people leader, an admiral this time, said, so if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. It looks trivial. You want to change the world, he says, start by making your bed. But it is not trivial, because this sense of accomplishment will accompany you during the day, and all the tasks that you will start, you will accomplish them the same way. And you will realize the importance of little things in life. Admiral Mark Raven says, if you can't do the little things right, you will never be able to do the big things right. Some of you may remember that. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of the shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a mist, lost. The kingdom was lost. And all that for the want of a horseshoe nail. This is a proverb highlighting the importance of small things in life. Coming to managerial explanation. But before going to that, I would like, maybe you are asking yourself, what are the links between that and EVM? You can see here, maintenance, that is criteria E5, maintenance management. Vaccine management is criteria E6. Temperature records, criteria E2, you see. Also, we can have criteria E7 here, distribution management. Here, we have criteria E9, support functions. The same things here. So you can see there are direct relationships between these things and the EVM criteria and categories. Now, managerial explanations. We have seen that small broken windows, if not repaired in supply chain management, will lead to large failures in maintenance, stock, and distribution management, and will lead to achieving low scores on criteria and categories related to processes. And that is the symptoms of the depression of will. But what does cause the depression of will? It is not natural. Depression of will is not natural. Nobody leaves his home to go to the office or to the factory thinking that and saying, today I'm going to do bad job. Everybody wants to do good job, but their good will seem to be repressed. By whom and by what? Ill will is exonerated. People want to do good job. Lack of resource cannot be invoked. We have seen that improvement plans have been funded by Gavi and other partners. So where is the cause? As we said earlier, we have to look at human psychology. Here, the pyramid of needs, according to Maslow, show the needs in a pyramid with physiological needs at the bottom and needs for self-realization at the summit. But you can see that needs for consideration and esteem of others is also high in the pyramid. Now, if we look at uncorrected broken windows, they create unsuitable and inappropriate working environment for the officers in charge with supply chain management. This makes them believe that program management lacks consideration for them. And in the long run, their self-esteem is undermined. Because as I said, need for consideration and esteem of others is a need for the staff, particularly the consideration and esteem of hierarchical superiors. The feeling that this consideration is not there erodes their self-esteem and demotivates them. So, if so, what prevents program management from seeing and correcting broken windows? One of the reasons is that management doesn't see broken windows because they neglect supervision. Supervision is not done regularly. And it is the first activity to be dropped when there is scarcity of resources. But even if supervision is well funded, like in Gavi-supported countries, very often supervisory teams do not include logisticians. They include medical doctor, surveillance officers, communication officers, but no supply chain managers. So when such a team arrives in a health facility or in a store, they will ask questions about all the aspects except logistics, except supply chain management. So this silence about supply chain management gives the supervisees an unspoken message, meaning supply chain management is not important. All the communicators will tell you, unspoken message is much stronger than the spoken message. But it's important to have that in mind. In addition to that, very often supervisors are not trained in supervisory techniques. They confuse supervision and monitoring. Monitoring must be done regularly and everywhere. People want to do supervision the same way, regularly and everywhere, and they do not have enough resources for that. You see, and also they confuse supervision and inspection. So instead of being supportive, it's like some inspectors are coming and people are frightened instead of being supported. And they don't use supervision books very often to note their observation, their recommendations for the next team to based on that and to move forward. So for all these reasons, supervision is not done correctly, and that prevents program management to see broken windows. But in addition to that, program management doesn't see broken windows because they overlook supply chain management. If you go to the program, you will see that some program managers can stay several months, even years, without visiting their supply chain management offices and warehouses. If you ask 10 program managers, when was the last time you visited your cold rooms? Many will tell you last year or before. How can they see broken windows if they are not going to visit? Not only that, they also, when they are planning meetings, monitoring meetings, reporting meetings, or meetings with technical and financial partners, they do not invite supply chain managers to those meetings, most often. When I was in Afro, we complained about that to the countries, and we requested them to raise the level of recruitment of supply chain managers. And a few countries went on and recruited pharmacists and medical doctors as national supply chain managers, so that they have in face of them people of the same level of education. Because at that time, professional supply chain managers were not numerous, but now people graduate from universities with a bachelor's of supply chain management, master's of supply chain management. So the situation has radically changed. So the program can recruit professional program managers with whom they can discuss, they can involve in planning meeting and strategic meeting with partners. In addition to that, the report that the program managers send to their own bosses rarely report on supply chain management because those bosses are interested on output and outcome indicators, coverage, disease incidence, epidemics. That's what is of interest for the minister, for others. So they do not request reports on input and process indicators. So reports of our program managers do not include those aspects also. So if they do not do supervision regularly and efficiently, and they do not show interest in supply chain management, how can they see broken windows? And how can they fix them? So I'm going to propose now some ways forward. The whole thing will start with program management. Program management must do everything possible to reverse the slope of the precipice of power and transform it into a real peak of power. That's the responsibility of program management. It starts with program management. If we want to improve things, program management must trigger the process by reversing the slope of the precipice of power and transform it into real peak of power. How? By revitalizing support functions, monitoring and evaluation, and supportive supervision particularly. And by using the results of monitoring to target those stores and health facilities where there are problems with supply chain management, and go only to those stores and health facilities to provide supportive supervision. Then they can supportive supervision more frequently, they can stay longer in every place, and supportive supervision will be more efficient. This peak of power will enable program management to detect in time all small broken windows in supply chain management and make arrangements to fix them. When that is done, staff will feel that program management has consideration for them and for their work. That will boost their self-esteem, because consideration and esteem of hierarchical superior is really a need for them, and they will be motivated. Self-esteem will spur the motivation of health workers. They will perform process function more efficiently. They will achieve higher scores on criteria and categories related to processes, and the depression of will be filled and transformed into a plateau of will. Then the average score will raise consequently. And that's not theory. It has been observed in practice. If you look at this graph, the thin blue line is the border between, is the existing border between cost and service level. The red line is the border between service and output. If we implement a new supply chain management strategy, which is more efficient, meaning we reduce the cost of implementing supply chain management activities, then we are taken to the the bold blue line, as you can see here, the bold blue line. We have reduced the cost of implementing supply chain management activities. Then, with the same budget, we can achieve an improved service to clients. And by achieving an improved service of client to client, we will have a greater attendance and we will increase our output. You can see the outputs here compared to this one. So it is not theory. For instance, instead of doing monitoring like supervision with the little budget they have, and then they cannot do supervision regularly, they cannot do it efficiently. If they target only places with performance problem and go there, they can go more frequently, they can stay longer, supervision can be more efficient. This will result with the same budget that they will have, they will improve the service level to clients and increase output. This is the example of supervision, but other examples exist. For instance, this is an example of a Latin American country. This graph represents the cold chain by age of equipment, below 5 years, 5 to 10, 10, 15, and above 15. You can see here that below 5 years or very limited, and above 10 years is really the majority of the equipment. So the cold chain is fairly old. But this country implements a good maintenance system. And you can see the green part of the bars is big. This represents working equipment. Red part represents non-functional equipment. They are minimum here because of the good maintenance system in place. On the opposite, in this Latin American country, the cold chain is younger. You can see the fridges below 5 years are much numerous here. But here, maintenance system is bad, is weak. And non-functional proportion of equipment, non-functional equipment are much numerous here. And it grows with age. The non-functional part grows with age. You can see that here. So although the cold chain is younger here, the non-functional equipment are much numerous here compared to the previous country, as you can see. Therefore, you must be convinced that the most important is not to have. The most important is rather the will. As Winston Churchill was saying, where there is a will, there is a way. Now some calls to managers and logisticians. I believe you are getting tired of listening to me. But before the calls, I would like everybody to realize that this is a shared responsibility of program managers and supply chain management officers. Each group has a particular role to play. And in each group, each individual has a role to play. And his responsibility or her responsibility is engaged. Indeed, as the picture shows it, no single drop of water thinks it is responsible for the flood. But who can deny that it contributed to it? So be aware of that. This is a shared responsibility of both program managers and supply chain management officers. I would like to remind program managers an old saying, which reads, "Who goes far spares his mount." Indeed, program managers tend to focus only on structural components of management, planning, control method, organization, etc. They overlook behavioral component of management, and they are surprised that success is not there. But behavioral management components are crucial, critical success factors. What management methods are there? How power is exercised? What leadership is exercised there? What are the risk and reward system in place? What culture is within? What attitude across the team? How trust and commitments are built up? These are the important factors for management factors. But those are forgotten most often by program managers. They focus on structural part of management. And of course, they face problem with success. That's the reason I'm calling upon them to translate broken glass theory into their daily management practice. During initial and in-service training, by informing and raising awareness among learners and participants about the broken glass theory. During supportive supervision, by observing all the broken windows, bringing them to the attention of supervisees, discussing with them, and finding together a solution to fix them quickly, and checking on subsequent visits. During evaluations, by including all aspects likely to host or generate broken windows, in supply chain management and evaluate them. For instance, in EVM2 now, toilets are evaluated. They were not evaluated in EVM1, but now you have realized that it is important to take into account behavioral components of management. In providing people with a good working environment is part of that. Within the limit of their budget, I would like to call upon program managers to show their supply chain management officers that they respect them by providing them with a clean working environment, even if it is oldish, and by giving them a budget to ensure a minimum maintenance of their equipment and facilities. Where do we want to work? Here or here? The difference between these two places is big, but it lies only in a few strokes of paintbrush and a few strokes of sweep. That's it. A few strokes of paintbrush and a few strokes of sweep. And you make this big difference, and people will be happier to work in your places. Still, my last call to supply chain management is to ask them to be strategic about supply chain management. First, they should recognize supply chain management as a strategic function within their program. Indeed, supply chain management is a value-generating function, as we have seen, and no longer solely a cost-generating function. It generates values for the program. It generates benefits, health benefits for the program by improving attendance because of more availability of products at health facilities. It generates financial saving by optimizing capacities of storage and transport. Also, they must take into account that supply chain management is in charge with at least 75% of the value of their program. If you add value of vaccine, value of consumable, value of cold chain equipment, cold rooms, refrigerators, cold boxes, if you add to that value of vehicles and motorcycles, you add to that operating costs, you have at least, in French we say au bas mot, 75% of the value of the program. So the function that deals with that is strategic. If you want to reap all the benefits of sound supply chain management, then you have to recognize your supply chain management as a professional officer. If the one in your program does not have the knowledge and competencies, train him or recruit a new person, but you must recognize your supply chain management as a professional officer. And you must involve him or her in your planning, monitoring, and reporting meetings at all levels, at strategic level, central level, or operational and district level. By inviting him or her in your meeting with your partners. Good managers know supply chain management is strategic. Only bad managers overlook it. Now calling upon supply chain management officers, they must also translate broken window theory in their life, relationships, and daily practice of supply chain management. They should not leave any broken windows non-repaired in their behavior, physical and social environment, whether at home or at work. The two are linked. It's not separated. The researchers have shown that people who are happier at home are more efficient at the office. And when they are more efficient at the office, they're happier also at the office. And when they go back at home, that happiness is also transferred to the people at home. So the two are linked. Don't leave any broken windows, whether at home or at the office. Do not allow you any deviation of behavior in the family, social environment, or professional environment. Develop respectful relationship with everybody. In your physical environment, if your employers give you a decrepit and dirty work environment, as well as old or outdated equipment, show them that you respect yourself by keeping this work environment always clean and tidy, and by maintaining as much as possible this equipment. Like this lady was doing in Comoros some time ago, and she was awarded for that. My last call to you, supply chain management officer, is that you cannot have good self-esteem if you do not do good job. Good self-esteem can only be based on good job. And without good self-esteem, you are in a big problem. You are in a big trouble. So start by doing your job at the best of your intellectual and physical abilities. Before asking anything else, do that. Otherwise, if you go around showing that you have a good self-esteem while you are not doing a good job, that's at best bragging or sham. It's not self-esteem. Self-esteem can be based only on good job, period. So start by that. Do your best of your intellectual and physical abilities to do the best job you can. No matter how your bosses are, no matter which environment they give you, do a good job in as much as possible. My take-home message for you is the following. I remember my old mom who always used to say, which means in English, it is the little cracks that become the big rifts. That's the African version of the broken glass theory, isn't it? The broken windows in supply chain management are those small deteriorations, those small neglects, those small transgression of principle, the small darks, those small disorders, those small behavioral shortcomings. They are small, but they signal cracks in our system of rules, authorities, and value. If you do not fix them quickly, bad habits will develop and they will become big rifts that will put our supply chain management building at the risk of being ineffective or even inoperative. That's my take-home message to you. Both supply chain managers and supply chain management, both program managers and supply chain management officers. As a reminder, we have seen that small broken windows not repaired in supply chain management will lead to large failures in management of maintenance, stocks, and distribution, and to the achievement of low scores on criteria and categories related to process, and that will depict a symptom of depression of will. But if program managers and supply chain management officers, everybody plays his role, and supply chain managers show by their result and their behavior that they do a good job, these will boost their self-esteem, and this will spur their motivation, and they will perform process functions more efficiently and they will achieve higher scores on criteria and categories related to process, and they will feel the depression of will that will become a plateau of will, raising the average score on EVM assessments. So that's a summary of my presentation. You will remember, and that's my last slide, from your younger age, that good dancers learn to dance in solitude by watching themselves dance in a mirror. That means they are their own supervisors. Why don't you do the same? Be your own supervisor. Not only will you become excellent, but in addition, here is your reward. What can be more beautiful than that? The smiles of baby and mom, well vaccinated. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Modibo, for this excellent presentation with the behavioral and sociological aspect, which is really fantastic. I think it's missing in many of our work. So we'll start with some comments, questions, but before that, just a quick announcement from Dan Brigden that everybody here probably knows. There will be in June, there will be an EVM webinar series that will take place. There are 4 sessions which are planned. So the first one is what is effective vaccine management, EVM, and what are the benefits of conducting an EVM assessment. The second one will be planning and delivering an EVM2 assessment, what, how, when. The third session will be developing, implementing and validating a successful continuation improvement plan, the CIP. And the fourth session, will be what does EVM tell us about the evolution of immunization supply chain performance from 2010 to 2022. So we'll give you more information by email, also on TechNet. Follow us for more information that you about this this webinar series on EVM. Let's start with some comments and questions. Yeah, Tato Mokele, who's saying this is an eye-opener for the immunization supply chain, and this presentation is very articulate for the senior management within our organization and stakeholders. So thank you, Modibo, for that. Derege Haile. Hi, Derege. Derege is saying this is an excellent presentation, as always, Modibo. My question is, in many countries, ISC, or immunization supply chain, is highly verticalized. What do you think of integration of supply chain contribution in improving the depression of will? Modibo.
Yes, I am a big champion of integration, and the people in Afro will remember that, and even in Optimize, I think Alex, you remember that.
Of course.
I'm a big champion of integration because it doesn't make sense to duplicate efforts, and that's a waste of resources. When we not only a waste of resources, but also a waste of time of people that we serve at the health facilities. It doesn't make sense for today to receive people from immunization, tomorrow people from malaria, the next day people from AIDS, etc., etc. While everybody can pool their effort together, they pool their means together and make more efficient use of the means, and spare the time of people on the ground to so that they can spend more time in medical care instead of dealing with logistics aspect. So I think integration is one of the ways to improve the efficiency of supply chain management indeed.
Thank you. There's another question, and yes, maybe Adama can answer that one. What is the difference between EVM1 and EVM2?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the question, and we'd like, first of all, to thank Modibo for this great presentation. it really opened to also great discussion. About EVM, the EVM initiative has started, and let's say the EVM 1 has been launched since 2009. And the discussion today was about the data analysis and the lesson learned from 10 years of EVM 1 implementation. The EVM 2 has now come on board since 2019 and was launched in March 2019. So learning from the EVM 1, that's the previous EVM implementation, EVM assessment and EVM implementation tools, EVM 1. But the EVM 2 learned a lot from the EVM 1. And the EVM 2 has replaced the EVM 1, and this is what is rolled out as of now. Of course, we are moving from improvement to improvement, but the EVM 1 has learned and also has let's say, used the opportunity of the new technology, like using the web technology to actually bring on the table a new and efficient tool that help programs and partners to assess and to assess quickly and efficiently, I would say, compared to EVM 1, and then invite everyone to the next webinars that have been announced, a few minutes ago and in the chat from the EVM Secretariat by Dan Bigden. So I think it's a good opportunity to move forward together by participating to these webinars and learn more about the EVM initiative in general, but also the different tools that are, different resources, I would say, that are used for implementing the EVM initiative. As started by Solo in the beginning, for those who were at the beginning of this presentation, actually, it's together as countries, partners, and also individuals that we can make a great use of the EVM initiative and help EVM program to improve. So that's what I can say for now. But the webinars, the next webinars on EVM will really be the opportunity for those who want to learn more on EVM initiative. Over to you.
Thank you. Adama, I think someone who's a bit excited about EVM 2 is perhaps even more excited about potential EVM 3. Any plans for EVM 3 is asking Nordin.
Of course, I think that's, I'm laughing because this is a very good idea but it will get there. We are right now at EVM 2.0, maybe behind the 0.0 we'll have 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, but of course, this makes things that this actually is not provocative, but it means that we are moving and progress is always welcome. So I will not be surprised to have EVM 3 in the coming years, but let's get use of the EVM 2 and learn more. Maybe we'll have a webinar on 10 years of implementation of EVM 2 and also learn from that and move forward to probably EVM 3. Why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Adama. Some more comments about the toilets, the evaluation of toilets in EVM 2. Zainab and Esther are saying they've always asked themselves why we're evaluating toilets in EVM 2. Now it's clear.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, this comes to how we can integrate, the environment. We evaluate the sanitation aspect of, the health facility that are visited for assessment, but also the buildings. Do we have cracks? What's the status of the ceiling, the status of the floor, etc., etc. These come to the point that Modibo raised, the working environment, and how we can also make sure that the small cracks, no, not the small, the small broken, yes, will not be big cracks. And this is good to have it evaluated or assessed in the EVM 2.
Thank you, Adama. There's a lot of questions and comments coming up. Zainab is asking, how can you address the broken windows while preparing the CIP, since many of these may not be necessarily reflected in the EVM results? Who would like to take this one?
I can try. Yeah, thank you, Zainab. Zainab, I think it's provocative. I think she knows that because I know Zainab and have been involved in many assessments. We work together in different countries. Okay, but having said that, actually, when you go for an EVM CIP is the improvement plan. When we have an assessment that is performed, we now move from the assessment that shows the strengths and weaknesses to having a plan that show how the improvement will take place for the next coming years before another assessment can come and see if the implementation have been successful or not. So the broken window shows a kind of I would say not the structural aspect that Modibo was talking about. The managerial aspect has some kind of leadership that should be shown, a kind of motivation that will be there in the environment, in the working environment. When you see the EVM, in the EVM 2, we have some criteria related to input. Input is what is necessary, the basic thing that should be there to expect a kind of performance to be there. These are the input. But you have also the output. And generally, this is a kind of weak part when we go from the few EVM 2 that have been performed so far. The output is what? It's what is expected from the staff. What kind of task the staff should be performing to get to the expected result. And these are the weak parts of the problem, the weak part of the implementation problem. And input can be there, but output generally being the part that the staff should be performing is not always there. And this presentation touched to this point, the will. The input, we have the investment on equipment, the investment on training, the investment on different things, but tasks that should be performed, supervision, monitoring, all these things. So this comes to when we see the theory of the broken window, it's generally related to this processes part, exactly what Modibo is here. So I see that when developing the improvement plan, this component of output, expected output from the staff should be really taken seriously to raise the leadership, to raise the will, and to raise the power of superior to make sure that things are done. Over to you.
Thank you, Adama. Some more comments. Fantastic presentation. Your legacy and that of Solokone continue to live on. Great mentor to EPI logisticians. Hope the slides will be made available to go over them again and again. And yes, the slides and the recording of this presentation will be made available. We'll send everything by email to everyone who registered to this webinar. More than 200 people registered to this webinar. So it shows that there's a lot of interest. Lots of thank you messages. We have another question from Suleiman Yusuf Ali. Thank you for your presentation. So my question is, what is the EVM conducted every 5 years? Sorry, I'm trying to make sense of the question.
Maybe Solo, you want to answer to that?
Okay.
Adama, go ahead.
Sorry, I was on a call.
Why is the EVM conducted every 5 years?
Why? Okay, I think the pattern is given. The EVM2, as I think that Dan has announced that The EVM2 webinar will be presented in the coming days, weeks. You will see that now the process before the EVM pattern, the frequency of the assessment was every 3 years. Now it has been put now to 5 years because the aspect of targeted assessment have been included with the EVM2. So those targeted assessment will help the country, the program manager, that to conduct on the specific criteria or area of supply chain management, specific assessment just to fix and address some of the issues or to measure the progress while implementing the improvement plan. And we think that this alignment also with the country programming, because most of the health programs have the frequency of 5 years, was something that we need to consider. And that's why we have fixed that 5 years. That alignment, over.
Thank you. Yeah, Suleiman thinks that 5 years is a long time. That's his last comment. Thank you for that. Another question: what criteria can be evolved to enable SCM-focused supervision? Question from Muhammad Ibrahim.
What criteria
can be evolved to enable SCM-focused supervision? Does this question make sense to you?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the meaning of the...
So, Mohammed, if you want to rephrase your question, perhaps.
Before supportive supervision was included in criterion E9 in EVM1, but now is in the management criteria, the M criteria, and also probably in the R criteria for the whole program. Adama, you want to?
Yes, maybe if I may hear. Yes, in the EVM2 in the webinar, you will see it that a supportive supervision have been made an independent standalone EVM criteria, which is the M4. So, and in that aspect, the compliance of the supportive management or implementation function will be assessed, deeply. So by conducting the EVM, you will just have the opportunity to deeply assess the supportive management, supportive supervision, implementation performance. Over.
So it's part of M criteria now.
Yes.
Before it was in E9 criteria, but now E9 in EVM2 is waste management.
Okay. Isa Subaya is saying, I guess Mohammed's question can be answered by incorporating the CIP as target points in supportive supervision. But Ibrahim is thanking you for the answer. We have another comment from Obeb Bakam Philip. Will integrating adaptive dimensional, sociological and behavioral to technical assistance provided countries by partners may play important role in improving these gaps? Experience on the field may suggest so, in my opinion. Balancing technical and adaptive component of technical assistance. So I can repeat the question if you want. Will integrating adaptive dimension, between brackets, sociological and behavioral, to technical assistance provided countries by partners may play important role in improving these gaps? I find this sentence a bit complicated. Is the Modibo, Adama, Abdoulaye, anything you'd like to say about that?
Abdoulaye, you want to try?
I think you can see the question in the Q&A in case you want to read it again, Abdoulaye.
Abdoulaye, you're muted.
Yes, I have seen the question. Just to say, maybe it's in the presentation of Modibo, it's a question of behavior, and maybe I think that it's very important also to maybe to take attention for in the training for the behavior and also training for the supervision maybe and maybe we can also imagine to elaborate some job aids for that also maybe that will help also to change the behavior. I think. Over to you.
Maybe if I may add to that, I think this is one of the start. I think the contribution of this presentation, this webinar, will be exactly pushing for that integration. So, and providing this aspect, this perspective of that dimension, you know, I think provide. I think some of the participants have clearly say that this is an eye opener. So to opportunity. So I think that now I think everyone here in the calls of Modibo has launched will be start implementing these integrating these adaptive dimensions, not just in the technical assistance. Over.
Thank you, Solo. We have 3 minutes left, so if anyone has one more question, please don't hesitate. Oh. Claude, bonjour Claude Mangobo. What additional strategy for country to continuously use CIP as a strong tool for monitoring of SCM activities?
What additional strategy?
Yeah, I don't see the verb. What additional strategy for countries to continuously use CIP as a strong tool for monitoring of SCM activities? I would say what additional strategy is there for countries to continuously use CIP as a strong tool for monitoring SCM activities?
Yeah,
I don't know if it is an additional strategy, but in one of the first slides, I've shown the Deming wheel, showing the continuous improvement process. You see that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know what additional strategy, by implementing this strategy of continuous improvement cycle, based on the evaluation of the implementation of the first comprehensive improvement plan, which is when it is implemented, we evaluate it, and based on the results, we act on that in the next planning process to not only to fill the gaps in terms of quantitative gaps, but also to improve the processes qualitatively. So I think those two aspects can be taken into account in the next planning phases to improve the next comprehensive improvement plan.
Yeah, just to complement here, this cycle in the Deming chart here that showing that these are assessment periods, but this can be also targeted assessment, you know, that you don't wait the 5 years. That's, I think Suleiman was saying it doesn't mean that you have to wait 5 years before you conduct the assessment to see the new gaps and then to correct. EVM2 is providing the tools and the means just to conduct every year, even every 6 months, whatever pattern you will want, frequency you want, just to conduct targeted assessment, just to fix, to measure that the implementation of the CIP activities, if they have led to some changes or some progress or not. So the full assessment, you don't need to wait the full external assessment that is validated globally. You have the opportunity to have every time you are planning it an EVM assessment, because it is simple, it is easy, and it is rapid to implement. So I think you will have those details on the EVM2 presentation, how these different type of assessment can be compiled and implemented to rapidly assess the implementation status and the progress of activity that have been identified in the CIP and correct some of them. So this cycle will be continuing there by not just the 5 years assessment, but even six weeks, a 6 month or annual assessment as such to monitor the implementation of your improvement activities. Over.
And if you include in those assessments something called process documentation. Process documentation enables you to analyze what has been done, what has been successful, then why it has been successful, what did not succeed, why it did not succeed, and that enables you to improve the processes of implementation of the activities in the next plan. Over.
Thank you. One last comment from Abdoulaye, who's saying, even in a district of a single facility, it will be possible to do EVM2 assessment periodically. This is what Abdoulaye is adding. Anything else you would like to add on this topic? No, I think, well, we're 2 minutes past 11:30. So we need to wrap up this webinar presentation. Thank you very much, Modibo, Adama, Abdoulaye, Solo, for this presentation. This is absolutely great, very, very interesting approach. And I think it could be interesting to think about possible other webinar sessions on personal leadership and how to develop this behavioral and sociological aspect within within EVM. So we'll send you more information on the EVM2 webinar series that should take place on June. So stay tuned. Thank you very much for this, for your attendance. And thank you. I would like to thank again the panelists. It was great to have you here. Everything was recorded here, so we'll send everyone by email the link to the recording of the session in English, also in French, and the presentation in English and in French. I wish you all a very nice rest of the day, and stay safe, and talk to you again, or I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.